tuned into any of these platforms, you can say hi, hello in comments if you can hear me. Um, so, those of you who've been tuning into Social Samosa Talks, you would know that over the past 2-3 months, we've captured how uh, how the Indian advertising and marketing industry is aligning themselves to the COVID-19 crisis, and we've done like a good bunch of discussions with uh, agency leaders, even with brands, on what and how to navigate through the crisis. But now that we are in the unlock phase, we thought that we would also try to canvas the opinion from marketing leaders across industries. And this is a series called as the new normal for marketing, because that is like, though people consider it as a buzzword, but I believe that new normal is the new reality, and all of us will have to accept it sooner or later. So with our panelists today, we'll try to understand how do they define the new normal in marketing, and what is it that they foresee for marketing and advertising in the coming months and in probably the coming year. Um, I think we'll tune in. We're just waiting for our panelists to join in, and then I'll do a round of introductions with them. Those of you who know me, I'm Hitesh. Who don't know me, I'm Hitesh Rajwani. I'm the CEO at Social Samosa. We are an online media publication that reports marketing and advertising on social and digital platforms. Um, so I think Anvesha is here. Vineet and Roch are also here. So to give you, for the sake of introduction, Anvesha heads digital marketing at L'Oreal Professionnel India. Vineet is joining us in as like he's the CMO. He's the country head of brand and marketing for WeWork India. And then we have Roch Dsouza. He's the CMO at Brand Factory. Guys, you guys are muted. Can you unmute yourselves? Yeah.
Hey, what's up?
Good. So to start with,
Satish, I think you're stuck. Yeah, I think we're stuck. Do we start running the panel ourselves?
Yeah,
we don't mind.
Right? Yeah, it's okay. Please join back. Yeah, like we were discussing before, there is nothing that happens on digital without a digital glitch at times. So I mean, probably we could like start by talking about what does the new normal mean to us. So,
yeah, I mean, Anvesha, you could start. Ladies first, as they say.
Sure. Okay. So I think we were talking about marketing in the new normal, etc. But I think the role of marketing does not really change per se, right? It's still to be very interactive, to be informative, to be creative, right? So the role of marketing remains the same. Of course, the ecosystem that we're operating in right now has changed quite a bit. It's a very unpredictable world that we're living in right now. So it has to be extremely dynamic and more agile than ever. So for me, that's been the shift that, when you would have like plans for a, say for a quarter or for a year ready, you're basically looking at plans on a daily basis or even like revisiting them, more than once in a day. So I think it's more to that level. One is that. The other is, of course, the way the consumer behavior has shifted, and the way it's, I'm sure we'll talk about it later as well. How do we really tweak everything to that, because it's a completely new world that we're living in. So how does marketing really look at those aspects, and then hence tweak communication, tweak what is it that they want to convey in that sense. So Vineet and Roch, if you could add to that as well.
Hitesh, we started off without you. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I understand. I think that's the new normal we were talking of. When you need internet, it just comes up. Yeah, Vineet, you can talk about.
I mean, just I don't think the new normal is here yet, right? According to me, we're still on the way to the new normal. Understanding what's happening right now, something we obviously did not foresee, or we foreseed it, but we ignored it. Whatever reason why we are in this situation, I think we are still in track to be into the new normal. Yes, consumer behavior and patterns have changed. Too early to call it a day. We've seen significant changes in consumer behavior across the last 50 years as the country has been developing across platforms. As marketers, I think it's important to closely watch what's happening. The big cry right now is digital internet. I think that boom has happened for a while. This situation has just played catalyst right now, and that's what it's done. We would have been in this situation from a consumer behavior standpoint in a year from now, maybe. So I feel as marketers, I think it's important that we stay true to ourselves, remember what we're doing, stay true to our stories, and obviously, most importantly, this is obviously the time to conserve cash, and also important to understand that brands that evolve through this crisis or understand and communicate through this crisis will be the ones that will stay. So from my end, I think the new normal is on the way. We are not there yet.
Okay. Roch, what do you think about the new normal?
I think the new normal, for me, it's in two parts. One, how do you look at it from a business opportunity point of view, or how do you look at our businesses? And second, how do you kind of, we can't forget how it is affecting us personally as well. So what I'm generally seeing is that the new normal is about overthinking. It's a lot about, we have started to overthink than what we should generally do. So I know it's affecting us all personally and professionally and in our businesses. But I think, overthinking any situation kind of also ties you down to what opportunities you can have. So I think that's one major thing that I would say, that the overthinking part. I think the new normal is also about saying that, how can you take an unpredictable situation and create it into an opportunity for you in your business. All of us would have had multiple ideas over the years that we have kind of wanted to do things, and we have never been able to do because all our businesses run in a certain manner. And there are a lot of preconceived notions that happen. I think here is a new normal opportunity for us to say that, how can you pick up the situation and go back to your idea board and say that, what were the ideas that we could not implement because of how we were all absorbed in our businesses, and look at this as an opportunity and try and, do all of that and try and see how you can create newer business opportunities for yourself. I think so. So for me, it's a lot about newer opportunities. It's a lot about starting clean slate. I think, it's a good way to reinvent your business. I think that that's the way I'll put it. And most importantly, the new normal is about being out of your comfort zone. I think we all have, over the years, even in terms of marketing, we've been in a certain comfort zone. We've never been challenged as marketers. Here's an opportunity for us that has challenged us and, put things on our head, turned us all around. I think I would look at it from, so for me, the new normal is a lot about opportunity. I think that's the well put.
All right. And like, speaking of of the lockdown period, which we've all gone through, and like most of us are still in lockdown and we are working from home. It's been like almost 3 months that all of us have been there in that state. So like, what are some of the changes you've seen in consumer behavior for your specific brands, and like, what are some of the changes you foresee in consumer behavior in the coming months? Like, because this time frame would have given you enough and more time again to even understand your consumers better, understand them more, because it's like in the past 3 months most of us have not communicated as much as we would do in ordinary circumstances. So if that is the case, then a lot of outside in approach would have happened, a lot of consumer insights you might have gained over this past 3 months. So if you can just share some thoughts and insights from there.
You want me to take it, or?
Yeah, I mean, I think each one of you can take it. Probably Anvesha,
Sure.
you could start. And
Okay, so maybe I'll talk about the top three insights that we have seen from consumer behavior perspective. First is, of course, which I'm sure will be common to all, is safety and hygiene. And like I work with professional division. So we have, we work with salons, who partner with, we partner with salons for, giving our products and services to consumers. So we've seen a lot of, apprehension that has come in about services, about, how the safety and hygiene practices are going to be followed in salons, etc. So I think one of the things that we've taken up we've used this lockdown to do is, one is to again, of course, upskill our hairdresser community. So how do we stand with them, in support of them and during this time? And we've trained more than 30,000 hairdressers virtually. We've trained them on safety and hygiene. We've trained salons on safety and hygiene practices. What is it that they should follow? And helping them in whatever way possible. So that's kind of support that we're trying to provide to them, because, and also help them with what is the kind of communication that a consumer, what is the kind of reassurance that a consumer would require when they're walking in. Also looking at certain, if there is a service that they were pitching as something like a relaxation service earlier, now is it something that they should talk about more as like it's a quick service, like a quick fix service. So it's not like really like you have to spend that much time in the salon. It's more of like maybe how do you really tweak that communication in the current situation, and really look at what is the most important aspect for the consumer. So that is one bit. The other is, of course, convenience. So convenience is something that we've seen that consumers are really looking at right now, because you've seen the local mom and pop kirana stores really benefiting, because hyperlocal players have really gained advantage out of this, by filling the gap, because you have whatever is really available, very easily to you is something that you would prefer. So be it if you're going to buy it, go and buy it physically, or e-com, of course, for essentials. So I think what we've also seen is, like, what we've done is like partnered with salons and facilitated with them to actually give home deliveries of products, which we've never done before. Like so they're actually doing that, helping them with some social commerce through chatbots, etc. So that's something that we're helping them with, so that while the products remain the same, it's more about how do we really get them to the consumer. So how do we really look at digital channels to connect them to the consumers and educate them? How do we help with the virtual diagnosis, bringing the diagnosis right at their doorstep, right from so I mean, we've always been in the beauty business of beauty tech, where we've already done some campaigns where we actually help you can choose a lipstick, try it online virtually. So we have taken that to another level, where a virtual assistant comes to the consumer, and you can actually do the diagnosis, a lot of diagnosis online, and then the fulfillment can happen in that way. And the third thing, of course, is again strengthening that brand equity, because as you all also pointed out, that brands that have really survived this the storm, in terms of really reinforcing what they stand for, what is it that they bring, the kind of value that they bring to the consumers. So that's something that we've seen has really evolved strongly for us, in terms of how do consumers place that trust in us now and also like going forward? So that's again reinforcing that trust with the consumer, keeping that connect on during and even after. Of course, the way we speak maybe changes as we go along, but the essence of what the brand stands for, how it cares for the consumers, what it the kind of services and products that we have, the quality, everything, assurance is something that we keep talking about.
Right. Vineet, what are some of the changes in consumer behavior you have observed in the past 3 months or so?
I'm just going to talk about my category. Been so involved in the last 3 months, just understanding the consumer during this crisis. And just before I begin that, I kind of agree with Roch, right? I mean, it's times like these, marketers dread times like these, right? They don't want times like these to ever happen. However, we always secretly wish for times like these, right? Because during crisis is when your character stands out, especially from a brand and marketing professional perspective. So, having said that, just going back to consumer behavior standpoint, I think from a consumer behavior standpoint, one of the things that's changed, and if you understand WeWork, we're kind of in the real estate category, right? It was unheard of how real estate experiences were experienced online. People didn't like doing that. They wanted to be offline and experience a product. And we feel that we see taking a certain amount of shift. A lot of people are open to now experiencing a product online. Just from, and the other bit that we noticed, and especially for a brand like ours, which is which thrives on connections and people connecting with each other. It's great to see, and also it's a highlight in the last 3 months that people are still making those connections, but they're making it through various tools online. So I feel, if you ask me from a consumer standpoint, one of the things that have changed for me is that in what they call a traditional category, which is real estate, you've seen a lot more movement and adoption towards the online world. So that's one big change that we've noticed, and that's where we are connecting now with our audience.
Okay. Roch, what are your observations on the consumer behavior front?
So, I mean, broadly, if I have to put it, we are moving from a consumption-driven economy. When I'm talking about consumption, I'm talking about categories that you would not generally, you have explored over the last 2 or 3 years because you had that much disposable income, to where we are moving now in terms of looking at essentials. I think, so the economy is moving from a consumption-driven economy, let me put it that way, to an essential-driven economy, and how that's changing consumer behavior and what are the categories that it's exposing to. I think very interesting stuff, because if you look at how gaming, how OTT, all of these, which were really, for me, just to get adoption done for these categories was such a big challenge earlier. I mean, not largely, but I would say there was a behavioral, change in that. I think that has moved drastically over the last 3 months. And how today, your me time is not just your me time, it's also about your family time, and how we've kind of, and hence how categories are getting exposed to that as well. Look at gaming today, Ludo King becoming one of the biggest games. It's a classic example of how something which was there for so many years existed, but today it's one of the top games that's been consumed, and it's been consumed by as a family. So I think from a behavior point of view, we're seeing that. Also, we all are aware how it's moving from an investing economy to a saving economy. I think, over the last couple of years, we saw a lot in terms of real estate investments, cars being bought. We had already seen some bit of downturn from the quarter 3, but I think what we're seeing now is the real world, right? So where we're seeing that people are saving. So I think, again, how in that saving economy, how do you make your brand relevant, and how do you kind of still be up there and make consumers still consume your brand? I think that's where the behavior is for me moving. And another thing was that personally, I feel from being constant to upgrading. If you look at how the online webinar world has changed, or the education world has changed. I think behavior is, the adoption is so fast as compared to what we would have seen earlier. Uh, I none of us as marketers would have fathomed this, that, in 3 months you would have online education become so big. And I think these are obviously triggered by where we are in terms of how we are behaving currently. And I think that's the major shift for us. From a business point of view, we are standalone stores. We are a retail format. The last thing that consumers want to do now is going and buying apparel, especially because they all are staying at home. But we, like I said, that when we have ideas which we always wanted to implement. We tried something and it worked brilliantly well for us. We always wanted to do pre-book our deals at the store. And we actually tried it in the last 2 months, and we did fabulous numbers out of it. So we have actually sold deals for our stores when they open up 3 months down the line, much in advance. And that was one of the ideas that worked very well. Virtual shopping, and you'll be surprised to know that consumers are doing virtual calling. We're doing virtual calling to WhatsApp and actually selling from our stores to virtual calling to our consumers. And interestingly, if you look at the audience that is adopting this, is fabulous. I'm seeing a very different trend in it. We are seeing very large ticket sizes because the time that the consumer invests on a virtual calling is high. So I think for us as businesses, those are the newer opportunities and trends that we have seen. And let's see how it moves in the coming months.
Sure. And from your understanding, like from your standpoint, when you say about moving from an investment economy to a saving economy, even that works in favor of brand factory, in the sense that you sell like 95% discounts to, like, there is so much discount that people get at a brand factory store. So I'm sure as in when people start stepping out for shopping, that is one place they would want to be. Uh, so
So
moving on, I mean,
there is an irony to that. If I can just quickly tell you, that's the general assumption that when it is about saving, it's about discount. But you have to look at the audience. The audience that is saving would not actually shop at that point of time because his priority is about saving. So that's the irony, actually.
right. And then, like, I've had a certain set of clothes with me for the past 3 months, and I'm just waiting for some green signal to step out and go shop. So that is that is something which I got in conversations with a couple of agency leaders as well, that you might see once people are stepping out, you might see a lot of pent up buying that might happen. And they're calling it pent up buying, they're calling it revenge buying for all the money that you saved. So yeah, moving on. I mean, so we've seen in the past 3 months, brands have been very careful and have been very cautious about what to communicate and how to communicate. And there have also been instances wherein some of the brands are not really sure as to what to do, other than maybe promoting a certain cause around social distancing or staying home, staying safe. So, and in the process, there are some brands who faced heat also from consumers. Like globally, there was McDonald's, which got into a bigger controversy. In the Indian context, very recently, I think an ad from Kent got a lot of flack because of the way it was being presented and portrayed. So, like, as brand custodians for your respective brands, what was your thought process when it came to communicating in the past 3 months, and what are some of the things brands should take care of while communicating in a crisis like this? Probably Vineet, you could start answering, and then we can have others.
Yeah, sure. So I'll tell you what, right? In times of crisis, you don't just communicate, right? You tell stories. You become part of stories, and that's what's been the essence of how we've tried to communicate in the last 3 months. I think it's critical for brands to realize to be true and genuine in the story they want to tell, even if it's being part of a cause. I think the more genuinity that you go out and show, the more truthful you are in your communication style, consumers will be able to understand, associate with it. It's critical for brands to not look like they're taking advantage of a situation, right? And that's why some brands got pulled up, because it felt like sometimes real time marketing is pushed so much in your face that people are all competing against each other. Oh, my creative before anyone else's. or my ad before anyone else's. And sometimes in that rush, agencies or brand don't realize that it could be extremely sensitive. And that's what I feel some brands got pulled up right in the beginning of this pandemic. I feel, like I said, it's important to be true to what we're trying to communicate. I think, and also relatability, right? I mean, if tomorrow me at WeWork, and I obviously want to go out and communicate a lot about safety and hygiene at our workspaces, which we've gone and attributed for in the last couple of months. I can't be not talking about my product and just talking about, for example, safety and hygiene. I think it's important to have the brand relate to what we're trying to say as well. It shouldn't be just because the whole world is working on something and there's real-time marketing is a fad. So essentially, we jump in and bring about our communication around that. And I'll give you a live example from now. There's an extremely sensitive topic that's going around in the US right now, and we see a lot of brands in India supporting that cause, and I completely support that cause as well. But I've also gone out and seen communication which makes it sound a little frivolous, right? So it's important to understand that one, your product relatability needs to be there, and the second is the trust and genuinity. Having a brand stories are like stories that you tell your friends. I mean, the more real, the more genuine, the more relatable that you make, the more people will believe it, and that same thing applies to consumers as well. So at WeWork, that's what we've tried to do: stay genuine, related to our product, and just push out a lot of content that is the need of the hour, which is essentially telling people how we're changing and adapting to the new normal, understanding and becoming a part of their lives, and understanding what their need is, and then communicating accordingly.
Okay. Anvesha, what are your thoughts on that?
I think, like you all, mentioned, there's a thin line. Brands that were completely silent during this time also have they could be perceived as not caring enough, at this point. And then brands who went all out and just talked only about products, services, whatever it is that they have to offer, could be seen as opportunistic. So I think there was a thin line that you look at, and as Vineet also said, it just can't be something that you want to talk about just because it's something that's trending or something that you need to you want to voice out. It should also have some level of relatability to your brand. So I think the key, some of the key for us was to be empathetic. Like whatever communication you're putting out, is it empathetic to the current situation, to all your stakeholders, to the clients, to the customers? So if that means that you don't talk about, so during the first month when that there is definitely, people are not going to really go out and buy your products as much as they were doing earlier, it's fine. We focused a lot more, on education. Like we focused on educating our hairdressers. We also focused a lot more on educating our customers. Like we did regular Ask Me Anything sessions by our education, heads within L'Oreal with hairdressers to answer consumer queries about how they can take care of their hair sitting at home. What is it that they should do? What should the routine be? So basically, it was all about you keep that brand connect because you don't want to lose that with the consumer. But at the same time, you make sure that it is very relevant in the times, even if it doesn't. If it doesn't mean selling a product or service of yours, if it is only just to educate them, to just engage them, that's fine. So that's how we looked at it, and I think that's the way we approached it.
Roch, how have you how have you thought through about the communication plan for Brand Factory per se, and from your what else have you observed with other brands communicating in that time frame in the past 80 days or so?
So I think, when this happened, the first, after a few days, once we all settled off and we realized what we wanted to do, we told ourselves that some fundamentals about the brands, obviously, while the situation is different, we don't need to change how we communicate because the consumer is used to seeing you in a certain manner. And like Anvesha rightly said it, we are a little quirky brand. We are not in the space of being emotional and stuff like that. So in a situation like this, how do we still communicate was a challenge that we had. And we told ourselves that we'll not be sympathetic about the situation, but we'll be empathetic. I think that's the call we took because we didn't want to kind of look at as being seen as a brand which is trying to be sympathetic, when the actual DNA of how we've communicated over the years has been about being quirky, being slapstick, being in the face, and so we told we'll not change our fundamentals. I think that's one major call we took. And in terms of observations, I think what I've realized is that typically, like how Vineet was saying, that everyone wants to be in the moment. I've seen all brands talking the same thing for the last 3 months, so including me. So I'll put it that way. I think we all need to kind of reinvent the wheel on that one. So if one guy is talking about safety, all the guys are talking about safety. And imagine the consumer who's consuming it. He's saying, okay, I've understood that you all are being safe about things. We don't need to put it in my face every time. So I think, we realized that how you kind of talk about safety also needs to be reinvented in many ways. So yeah, that's the observation.
Yeah, I've seen like this observation. I've seen. I mean, an independent creator had created like a guide to how do you change logos during COVID-19. So like, how do you do social distance? And then there's this video, I think, from someone in the US who's made like a template video on how corporate videos look like during COVID-19. So there is this pack shot of a very blank or an empty city, and then there are drone shots, and then there are people coming together, and we are in this
Right.
together. So
Right.
that was like a template which I think all of us have observed.
Yeah, and sorry, also to add to what Roch said, I think, also with safety and hygiene, which is obviously of the primest concern for everyone right now, even from a brand standpoint, safety and hygiene for me, from a communication standpoint, could be very different from what Roch wants to do, right? So essentially for him, he doesn't necessarily have to sanitize his workspace every 2 hours. Like from his product perspective, right? He doesn't necessarily have to be fumigating his workspace. So that is another thin line that people need to watch. I mean, yes, we're talking about safety and hygiene, but you also need to be staying true to what your product is. I mean, you could take the template like you're talking about and put it out there and then look like a fool. So I mean, that's something that you need to be extremely careful about.
Right. And so and now things have changed. I mean, with lockdown restrictions being lifted, there is unlock one as a phase which is going on. How do you think brands should switch gears now? Like, you can't keep hammering the same messaging that you've done in the past 3 months. Somewhere you have to give signals to consumers. You can't even be open and tell them that, we are open, you guys come, like you guys start coming in. That is not something which is sensitive to the sensibilities. But at the same time, you will have to give some signals to consumers that you are open for business. So how is it that you guys, like, how are you guys tackling this as this communication challenge? Probably Roch, you could start, because like you again a standalone retail store entity.
Sure. So what we have actually done is we've created scenarios, and when I'm talking about scenarios, like you rightly said, today India is divided into so many zones. We realize that one strategy obviously cannot work for the entire market. What we've kind of done is we've understood which are the markets which are opened up and how badly were they affected, over the last 3 months, and then what should be a strategy in those markets. So if I have to broadly put it, we had put it in three buckets. The important one was the markets which are badly affected and are opening up, but obviously the response is not that great. How do we tackle that? The market which was not affected largely, and how do we look at that bucket? And then there's another one which basically had some green zones and orange zones, but and how do those markets react? So communication and what we do in each of these three buckets, we kind of addressed it accordingly, and we made sure that we are relevant in that market given the situation that we are in, and we're seeing that. I mean, if I have to give you very simple examples, market like Latur is doing fabulously well. It's doing numbers as similar to what we were doing before COVID, and there are multiple single cities like this which were not affected by COVID. And how they are back to square one, because people were like suffocated and they were like, why the hell are we at home when everything's fine in our city? And now they're like they have gone bonkers and they're wanting to shop, right? So we are seeing very different reaction in these cities. Now again, how do you kind of then look at these and plan accordingly? I think that's how we've adapted and aligned our self largely we've kind of done that.
Okay. And Anvesha, what is it that you guys are doing now with the lockdown restrictions being lifted? What like how do you suggest brands switch gears from here?
Sure. So for us also, similar to what Roch has suggested, that what we've done is we've divided the markets into red, amber, green in terms of looking at actually listening. So I think the most important piece right now is really keeping our ears on the ground, seeing what's actually happening, right? So it's not just about some communication that you put on social media. What is really happening in that particular location, that particular city right now? So consumer listening, like basically really seeing what consumers are really talking about, what's the sentiment, and then bringing in market realities, what is really happening there, and what is the kind of demand that's there. So of course we're slowly transitioning to a point where we find more comfortable talking about directly about products, services, etc. But of course the sentiment is not going to change overnight. So of course it's not going to be like suddenly since markets have opened up, people are going to rush to the salons, or they're suddenly buying beauty products. Also we see that when people are wearing masks, your eye and your hair care is something that's bound to kind of pick up, while of course a certain aspects of makeup might not that be that much in demand. So we're looking at that how do we first look at a market wise approach, then a category wise approach, and within that then how do we look at to start with a hybrid model again, like as I said, some virtual assistants to help you till, like say suppose for example a WhatsApp chatbot to basically help you select the shampoo, where it kind of diagnoses your hair online and then gives you like a shampoo recommendation. And then we have say an e-commerce or a home delivery to fulfill it. So basically maybe like kind of going halfway to the doorstep of the consumer as much as we can, and then like bringing in them bringing the fulfilling the gap in terms of how do we get that product to the consumer. In terms of services, again, as I said, we are looking at slightly services which could be like a quick services as well, which people might be maybe more comfortable going in for at the start. And how do we really look at, so for us also within the salons, what is the sentiment, how are they looking at it, how are they looking at their business, what is the kind of support that they need in going back to business. So that's also something that we really are working with them on, helping them also with pieces of communication, that how should we really talk to consumers in that sense. So it's both ways, and so yeah, I mean slowly moving towards back to business, but I think for a very long time it's going to be business as unusual, because a lot of choices that we had never thought before have actually become necessities, right? So we're actually living in a very different, and it's going to stay like that for a bit. So we need to tweak the way we bring our products and services to the market. So I think that's something that we're constantly working on as we go along, and we're like kind of reinventing ourselves even now, like as we are going back to business. So yeah, that's how.
And Vineet, with WeWork, like I know that I think some of the units have started operating now in markets which are green zones or non-containment zones. So like how are you, like I think you did mention that safety and hygiene has been your core communication peg at this point in time. But apart from that, how are you as a brand aligning yourself to the coming 3-4 months with probably lockdown restrictions being lifted more than often, and like what I think the expectation is that it'll loosen down further. So what are you looking at as?
Yeah, so Hitesh, just I mean, from our spaces perspective, we're obviously opening spaces which wherever the government is opening the lockdown and giving us permission to, we're using all our safety and hygiene, and our operations team is doing a fabulous job in creating an ecosystem which is extremely safe and hygiene in our workspaces, and that's what's been communicating with that we're communicating in our brand comms as well. However, I was listening to everyone, and I saw a few comments on the chat as well. One of the things that people are saying is, this is our reality right now, and this is where we are. But I mean, I live in Bangalore, and I was driving back from work yesterday, and the traffic was the same. right? So it's not that this is our new reality. People, as the opportunity arises, as things are opening, people are going to get back to normal, what they used to perceive normal, or the new normal, or whatever you say, the old normal, right? I mean, you are seeing people back on the roads. You are seeing people going back to restaurants and having a bite. I was watching a video, a friend of mine sent from Paris today, which was essentially, it's back. It's, people enjoying their drinks together. So from our brand perspective, which thrives on a lot of connection, which thrives on people coming in, I think safety and hygiene obviously is paramount in terms of communication that we go out and tell our people. But most importantly also, it's important for us to communicate the ecosystem changes that we're making, right? I mean, you will see a lot more spaces between seats. You'll see space being used, a lot more. There'll be a lot of distance provided across connections that you make at our spaces as well. So I think the core for a place like ours, or even for someone like Roch who wants people to come into the units, I think we are going to be stressing on the fact of safety and hygiene, because that's something critical for people right now. But yeah, I mean, in the next 3 or 4 months, from a WeWork standpoint, I think we will talk also about the fact that maybe it's a new world. And like I said right in the beginning, if we are moving to the new world, we will still be a place that can help you make connections and build your dream. So that is going to become the essence of our product, is not going to change, and that is what we're going to communicate to our audience as well.
Okay. And so we've spoken a lot about the challenges around marketing in this COVID world, and we've spoken a lot about even how consumers at this point are more inclined towards like only doing essentials buying. So in this process, I mean, these are challenges which all of you are tackling in some sense or the other. But through the process of this lockdown, and like from your survival in the past 3 months, what are some of the opportunities you see in a post-COVID world? When I say opportunities, like Roch had mentioned earlier, that this was a good time for us to upgrade and learn, or to go back to our ideas board and find some things which have been pending on the list. So that is one thing which people have done a lot. They've upgraded, they've thought of reinventing certain models, uh, they've thought of pivoting from one position to the other. But as marketers, what are some of the opportunities you see in a post-COVID world? It could be something which is directly related to consumption patterns of people on digital platforms, to people being more cautious about things. So probably, Roch, you could start with that. I mean, some of the opportunities you foresee.
We've over the last couple of years, we've expanded very strongly, and we've gone into tier 2 and tier 3 markets as well. So close to about 50 cities. But typically how marketers behave, and me included, we would look at your top 8 cities contributing to the business, which is about 50%, and we would focus more over there. I think the opportunity today is in tier 2 and tier 3, and I'm not saying that from sounding cool in terms of how tier 2 and tier 3 is going to fuel the Indian economy, but the reality is there. So today, for example, my tier 2 and tier 3 markets were contributing close to 40%. I think the opportunity is to take it up to 60%, and with a very limited amount of stimulation that you would require to do. So I think tier 2 for us clearly is a big market. The other thing, we've wanted to kind of do a lot in terms of ethnicity, in terms of identifying consumers by their ethnicity and doing things around it. I think, I might sound offensive over here, but there are communities who will not change their behavior even after COVID. So, for example, a Gujarati community will go and shop and eat, and that's the natural instinct behavior that they have. So, how can you tap into these communities specifically, and look at opportunities that they can have? Business community, for example, we as a business always looked at IT and the salaried class as a class which could come and contribute a lot to our business. But I think today the opportunity lies in where the money is, where most of the business communities would have some amount of savings, I'm assuming. So how can we look at that? So for me, the opportunity is a lot about that. And the last part, obviously, we've been wanting to drive consumers from online to offline. We've been successfully doing it for the last 1 year. And I think here is another opportunity through virtual shopping and pre-book deals that we have introduced. And how can we take it to the next level and kind of drive consumers in? So broadly, these are the ones which I look at as opportunities.
Yeah, while you were speaking, I mean, there were a lot of WhatsApp forwards which were going on around people having masks and shirts which are matching. And I think that has come, like that product has come to shelves now with shirts with matching masks, which is going on. So yeah, I mean, that's an interesting thought there. Anvesha, what do you think are the opportunities for marketers at large in a post-COVID world? It can be something that relates to your current role, and it could be something that you foresee in general for other sectors as well.
I think we're moving, at least in the short term, we're moving more to a low touch to a zero touch economy, like as they call it, because with social distancing and everything else that's coming in terms of people being apprehensive. I think being a digital marketer, I mean, I see this as a great opportunity. I mean, even this is something that we've realized even during. I think what we joke around is that the biggest digital transformation catalyst has been COVID-19. Like never before you've seen like such an unprecedented interest in digital across, businesses, brands, even, stakeholders within your own organization. So you will obviously see that there is a very huge interest both from the consumer end as well as the business end to invest on digital. So I think this will actually help a lot of technology interventions to come in. Maybe to automate processes, to make them simpler. How do we really, can a certain human touch be replaced by something that's, maybe a bot or maybe something that is, that can take away that step, maybe to make it smoother. So I think what we've all realized, not just in, how we talk to consumers, even within our ways of working, that's something that's really coming together. And I think this will really reinvent the way businesses work. Like I was just talking to my cake shop and they said, you can just, view a brochure online. They have really made like and I have been, really talking to them for so many years. I've never heard them, like they would actually note down every order, like, they wouldn't even on the phone so they are actually looking. So you see a lot of traditional businesses really trying to see how they can connect and really drive business, virtually as well. So I think that's one, and also a lot of technology that's going to really help us. So I think that for me is really exciting to look forward to. And of course, ultimately the just lies in solving that problem for the consumer, right? It all comes to that. So wherever we are able to, whatever challenges we are facing right now, I think we lean heavily on these channels to see how we can bridge that gap and bring to the consumer what is it that they need. So I think I see a lot of these the food aggregators like these Swiggy and Zomato, the way they've really relooked at their business, like how they're showing the temperature of the person who's going to deliver. So even small aspects like those, which basically make the person realize that the business is very sensitive to the situation, is really taking all the efforts. So it's just a small tech integration, right? But it's really going to bring up the trust for you to be able to order. So I think those kinds of interventions, they need not be like a big, huge transformation, but just something that kind of brings those aspects in, I think will be something that will be appreciated in the market.
And Vineet, what are some of the opportunities you see for marketers in the post-COVID world?
So the couple, I mean, if you talk about my category, obviously, like I said earlier, real estate usually stays as far away from digital as possible. But that certainly has become an opportunity. That certainly is being looked at from a different lens across brands. I mean, some brands adopted to it, like I mentioned, Embassy before, but there are a lot of brands now looking at real estate from a digital lens, which is great, which is a massive opportunity for a lot of us. Those 24 touch points that you have across real estate, if 22 turn out to be digital, that's going to be, we need to be prepared for it. It's not something I think we are ready for. It's high ticket purchase, right? So that's, I think, is a massive opportunity. Brands that leverage that and are on top of that game, I think will do well from a category perspective. From an overall perspective, I think a lot of things that Roch and Anvesha have already touched on, but one of the things that I really wanted to point out, and this is taking a cue from what Roch started right at the beginning, was talking about gaming and how gaming has increased in the past 3 months. As marketers or brand creators, one of the key problems we all have is how do we look at new content formats, right? Who do we look to partner with? Who do we go out and so there was a time when it was just celebrities, then you had influencers, then you had in the influencers you had stand-up comics, and then you had fashionistas, and I feel suddenly this gaming category has become such a big category from a online consumption standpoint. Also, I have a younger brother who sits and watches people game the whole day, which is kind of strange for me. I'm like, listen, you're not even playing, you're watching people game. So I feel that category from a growth perspective has shown some tremendous amount of shift. And maybe from brand and marketing perspective, and obviously your product needs to integrate with that association. I feel there's a massive opportunity in tapping into that sector, not just from a partnership, from a content aspect, but also from a is there a way to integrate that aspect in your product to figure out if you're catering to that kind of audience? So I feel those two are big opportunities, from my side.
Great. So, like, we've introduced this new section in this panel discussion, wherein, rather than me asking questions, or we are like us taking questions from the audience, which we'll do later, we'll have panelists ask questions to each other. So, like, each one of you can ask a question to the other two panelists. So probably, Roch, you can start this and ask something to Vineet and Anvesha. Something which you wanted to know about from their particular sectors, or in general, if you wanted to pick their brain.
Sure. I think I want to ask Vineet a question, because he's in a very, very interesting category. And given the times that we are in, how did you react to it? Because for me, there are two aspects to it. Again, one is the organizations who are taking spaces from you, and the other one would be the employees who are actually part of those organizations and when they'll come back to work. So any thought on how you're going to tackle both of them? Like, how are you looking at it?
Yeah, so I mean, from an employee perspective, I can start. As you see, I'm back in office. So we're back in office. Like I said, the safety and hygiene standards that our ops team has maintained is second to none right now, and they putting in a lot of effort. So I feel literally safe sitting in my cabin right now and talking to or interacting with my team. From a member's perspective, Roch, I feel actually a significant change in member behavior in terms of looking for more spaces like us, right? Which is more aligned, more flexible. Flexibility is going to be a key term in terms of from a working standpoint, right? One of the key things that I've realized in the past 3 months is work from home is great, but it's not sustainable, right? And a lot of us would be feeling that heat. And essentially, also, when you come to work, you make these connections. You are part of building a big dream. You're motivating others. You're being appreciated for what you do. You can take that chai break. You can take that sit-up break. You can walk around. These are all part of things that make work a lot more interesting, and workspaces a lot more interesting. And that's why I feel from workspaces standpoint, I think they'll be looking for more flexible options, which is something our brand provides as well. So essentially, more flexible option, like maybe getting workspaces which are closer to your house, or closer to team members' places. So these kind of options will play a large role. No capex right in the beginning of taking a workspace. And so these things I feel will fuel our industry a lot more. And I feel for us, yes, it's interesting times, but from where we see it, I feel there's already a lot of interest in the brand and the product because of the options and the flexibility that we provide. And I think it's going to be interesting times from here on.
And like, even I think that way, that say if I have a rented space at this point, I would like, as a business owner, I would have to go back, manage some restrictions, like some of the guidelines which the government has given, and I have to set up an infrastructure to manage that and ensure that while I'm ensuring the safety and health of my employees. So I think managed workspaces like WeWork and others, if they are able to communicate this piece of the offering quite well, I'm sure a lot of businesses might pivot to that as a model. Like if I get something which is affordable at this point and that takes care of this part of my mindset, then I'm quite sure that like I would love to try that as an option at least till some normalcy is restored.
Yeah, I mean,
And
you're right, Hitesh, and as you said, I think it's important for people to, like you said, I mean, it's important for people to understand that when you're working in a workspace like WeWork, it's we take care of everything while you're going out to build your dream, right? So essentially, that is a big leverage, especially at these times. I mean, you don't need to be worried about anything, and just you walk into the space, you feel safe, you go about doing what you're doing, and then you go back home as you would. And so yeah, that's an insight that we're trying to use in our comms as well, just telling people the importance of how spaces like ours could help. And yeah, fingers crossed.
yeah, Anvesha, who would you like to ask the question to, and what would that question be?
Maybe I'll ask Roch a question, and that is more on my own consumer behavior. Like whenever I go out to shop for clothes, one of the biggest highlights for me is to be able to go and try it on, because that's like the beauty of going out and shopping, right? So I was just curious to know, like, how is Brand Factory really looking at that aspect in right now, and maybe like solving for it.
Right. So trials are obviously, especially with women, it's a very, very, very important buying decision. But what we've done is at a store level, we are if the trial happens, we are keeping the garment separate, and we are steam ironing it, and we're giving about 48 hours for this garment to come back. So one, it is kept away for 24 hours, then it is steamed ironed completely, and then it is brought back to the flow. I mean, technically, that's what we are doing to make sure that we are maintaining hygiene on that front. But if you look at how millennials today shop, the behavior is slightly different. They don't try as much, so that's a good advantage that we have. They are more about picking it up and moving quickly. So that's the way it's happening. But yeah, it's a challenge. It's definitely a challenge for us.
But I don't know, like I might have the courage to go step out and shop, but even I would not want to try something there. If I like it, I might just pick it up because I already know my specs, and I would know that, okay, this is something that fits me, and I'll take it and maybe wash it, iron it, and then wear it before sanitize it as much as I can, and then I would do. So that is something I think you might have observed. People might not have been trying as much as they were earlier.
But Hitesh, we Indians are very, we evolve every day. And as you see, people are climbing into buses together. They are not following any mask and not following social distancing. So while we all want to be overthinking about the situation, I personally feel that yes, as an organization, we need to take precautions, and that's what we're doing. But consumers may not be thinking as much. That's my take, and that's what we've been observing at the store as well. That the initial first week of the store opening up, we have consumers who are coming in and who are observing. But once they get the confidence that we are honest in the way we're doing things, that confidence then pulls through everything. If we're just talking about it on social media and our social media handles that we're taking all safety precautions, but when the guy is entering the store, he's realizing that's not the case, then we have lost the plot completely. So I think that's where the game changer is for all retailers today. If they can, stick by what they're trying to talk.
And I think a lot would happen in terms of technology, probably having these virtual try-on apps and AR experiences which help you tap on it.
Right.
And one idea while you guys were talking I had was probably have like you have a PPE kit, but you have a quick kit which helps you try on. So you wear that bit first and then you try clothes on that. And that could be something which is like disposable.
That's even more dangerous. If you've tried a PPE kit, you'll sweat in about 5 minutes, and then after that, the garment that you're going to try is going to be much more unhygienic, by the way. So it's
No,
a
I'm just
very,
talking
very
about
tricky
the
situation.
Vineet, who would you like to ask a question and what
I'll
question?
I'll ask Anvesha a question, just from a beauty category perspective. Um, you obviously there's been a lot of talk about how that category will be affected because of the current crisis. Are you guys looking at partnering with brands like maybe Urban Clap or House Joy, who have taken beauty to another level, taking the whole essence of that whole category to some people's homes? So are you guys, from your brand perspective, looking to partner with brands like this that actually cater and take the service back to people's homes?
If I talk about, so like if I talk about the professional services bit, not no, because our entire business is fueled by the salons that they have been our partners for years. So what we're instead trying to do is like, how do we really support the salon business as much? Okay, and the concept of freelance hairdressers in India is not very big right now. Like you don't, like while in some other countries you do see a lot of freelance hairdressers, and rent a space and then kind of. So that concept will take some time to evolve in India. It's not there yet. So for us, of course, the priority is how do we get salons back on their feet? Because if you see L'Oreal for the last 25 years, and if you see what we've tried to do in India, and the professional division has literally built the industry. So if you see like 25 years ago, you had these beauty parlors only, and one of the first concepts of salons came through L'Oreal when we built the community together. So we've given this community so many years, and we've like worked with them to build right from how they have brought beauty as a professional service to the clients, right from the infrastructure solutions to products, services. So I think it'll be like too easy to give up right like that on them suddenly, because we are in this crisis, because what we're working though with them is to evolve. How do we really get them to be closer? So as I said, like home delivery was one, maybe helping them with a social commerce piece where they can actually look at some virtual form in which they can actually diagnose, they can actually bring products to the clients, is what we're looking at. But definitely that's not the kind of dimension that we're looking at the moment.
Perfect, thank you.
Interesting. So we'll take some questions from comments and probably then close on with thoughts from your end. So there's one question from Tanaya Mehta. She's asking, how do you think the job market will be for marketers currently? What courses would you suggest to study during these free times? Anvesha, you might want to answer this because you also teach a lot of people in colleges. So probably.
So I think, for recommendation on courses, I think it's a very personal choice, because it completely depends on what your need is. Like, is it to upskill in a particular domain that you're working in? Is it to really look at transitioning completely from a traditional marketer to a digital marketer? Is it so? It's completely dependent on that. So there are a variety of platforms available, and as Bankos also spoke about that, online education has really boomed in these times. So I think, and there are lots of sessions by social Samosas that happen, which kind of gives you a lot more perspective into digital marketing. So I think you could probably look at courses that are being offered, look at the guideline. What I would suggest is just see what is the need for you, what is it that you're trying to solve for, and then look at a course. Because some course adds to your resume and you think that's something that's going to help, maybe that's not the best choice at all times. Because of course, when you're going back and applying that course, because that's really important, when you're really going and using these concepts, that's when it should be the most useful. So I think, because digital marketing is something that you just don't learn completely via course, right? Or that's something that you learn when you really apply the concepts and you get your hands dirty. So whatever you do, always see if there is a lab, there is something, a live project or something that you can do along with it to really try out what you're learning. So that'll be my recommendation.
Great. I think that answers your question. There's one more question from Zoya. So Rock, probably you would want to take it. The question is, how does a brand maintain loyalty and trust with respect to consumers, uh, with the risk of their marketing strategy looking forced? And probably you could also answer this bit, that how do you even create that trust in consumers now to step out and shop in stores like yours or in any other retail store for that matter?
See, I think fundamentally what we have told our sellers is not hard sell. Because in these times, if you're trying to hard sell, you'll be seen as someone who's not empathetic. I think that's the first one. We should fundamentally, to win trust, you should kind of not try and hard sell yourself. And while we are a very very aggressive promotion driven brand, we are making sure that we are maintaining a certain balance, and also how we would create urgencies around our promotions. We are trying to relax it a bit more, because we realize that we have to give consumers that much opportunity to come to our stores. So some fundamentals that we have changed in terms of how we're communicating and what we're doing. But I think answering on the trust factor, I think uh, the consumer should see you consistent in what you're doing. I think fundamentally that's something you should always stand by. We've always been that. Whenever we've communicated a promotion, we have kept the least terms and conditions, because we've realized the consumer has evolved. And while you might say up to 50% and your store has only 10% of your merchandise on up to 50%, then you're typically fooling the consumer. So even in these times, why we want to drive the consumer in, that those fundamentals of how you build your business model, that those fundamentals should not be changed, because maybe if you're having a cost pressure, or if you're having some financial pressure, that because of which you have to maintain the store in a certain manner. I think those should remain constant. And when the consumer comes in, he needs to see that he's seeing the same store before COVID, and but being more empathetic about it. So I think that's how we are looking at it, at least.
Okay. I think that answers your question, Zoya. Vineet, this is a question I think would suit your expertise. So, Anu is asking, do you think there'll be a pure shift to work from home model, or there would be something which is mix and match? And then, like, probably you can top this question with some factors brands should look at while planning their marketing strategy for the next 6 to 8 months, like factors which should contribute to your brand's marketing strategy. So these are two questions which I've just clubbed in.
Yeah, so I mean, to answer the first one, I don't think work from home is a permanent shift. It's the need of the hour. It's we had to stay at home. We had to let this time go by. And I mean, it's not the cases have decreased. I mean, it's still mounting up. Yes, there will be a certain time frame where people will be working from home, but I feel like I mentioned earlier, and like you mentioned right now in your question, and people are going to be looking at more flexible options. Brands and employers will need to look at more flexible ways of functioning. That means maybe getting half the team for a couple of days, half the team for another couple of days, maybe dividing their office spaces across various spaces across the city or across the country. So there will be, people will need to look at flexible options. But yeah, work from home, I honestly don't feel, and it's not just from a category perspective, but from a person who's worked across category, I don't think work from home is going to be a permanent, I can't even call it a solution, right? If it was a solution, then we would not be where we are right now. So, permanent fixture, as you would say. Your second question was.
So there's someone who's asked, what are the key factors one should account for when it comes to planning a marketing strategy for the next 6 months or 8 months from now?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the key things is, important to realize what the objective is. Obviously, realign all our objectives. And beginning of the year, we all must have started with, a different set of numbers and objectives. And come March, we would have realized that, all of that has gone topsy turvy. So realign towards the new objectives. Obviously, look at your plan all over again. As Roch mentioned, analyze your consumer. the best time, quiet time when you look inside, understand your consumer inside out, and then start planning your marketing plans based on that. Also, very critical is budgets, right? I mean, save as much as cash as possible. Try to innovate more. I did see a question which was related to this, which was essentially, if brands don't spend, don't they, won't they die off during this period? I don't think so. I mean, it's important to innovate. Roch could answer this better, but like Levi's, I think during the 2010 recession, came up with a fantastic innovation where you could actually pay in installments for your jeans. And that became a huge hit. So essentially, and that didn't need a lot of money. So great innovations or even great stories don't need a lot of money to be impactful. And I think that's critical. Save your money right now, realign your plans, realign your objectives, look at everything again, analyze your consumer, watch the behavior pattern, and then work from, and be flexible in your marketing plan, just like your workspace. Be ready for change.
So I think because it's the moment at this point. Any fleeting thoughts while we close on this discussion? Roch, Anvesha, Vineet, if you guys have any closing thoughts.
I think just to add to what Vineet said, I think I read a very interesting article on how we're not working from home right now, we're working from captivity. And also going forward, it's not just going to be working from home, it could just be working from anywhere. It's basically like, really helped us open up this opportunity towards gig workers, towards people who are working remotely, from locations. So I don't think it's kind of taking away anywhere from, that we will not go back to office again the way we would. I think a lot of us have missed that for sure. So I think it will just be possibly, you'll just be wider in terms of, how you're thinking about it. But I don't think that's going anywhere. It's just a phase.
Yeah. I'm actually seeing some of the guys asking for job opportunities, placements. All of that is a reality today. I think it's important that we don't, like I said it at the start, we don't get overwhelmed by this. We look at it as an opportunity. We look at it how you want to upgrade yourself, what you want to do around. If you have free time in hand, please make the most out of it. Today we are all assuming a lot of things because of the limited exposure that we have by what we would get by going to our markets and stores and visiting and actually observing it ourselves. We are totally dependent on media or some WhatsApp messages that keep coming into your WhatsApp groups. Yeah, and we try and assume and create a world out of it for ourselves, and as personally as well as professional. So I think it's important that we kind of calm down ourselves a bit and look at this opportunity and look at it as and stop assuming and observe yourself and make assumptions accordingly. I think that's the way I'll put it.
I think, Roch, you worked on a video during this lockdown period on your own, right? I mean, you created.
Yeah, I did. Yeah. I've started blogging also, so let's see how it goes.
Nice. Vineet, your closing thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, just taking a cue from what Anvesha and Roch said, I think it's not the time to panic. I think it's also not the time to overreact. From a brand communication standpoint, it's important not to jump the gun, and everything that's going around doesn't necessarily have to be a trend and you have to be jumping on it. So I would say stay true to your brand, stay true to your product. And yeah, I mean, remember that this time too shall pass. So I would just request everyone to stay safe, and from a brand standpoint, stay true. And I think we should be good.
All right. Thank you. Thanks a lot, Vineet, Anvesha, and Roch, for your time today.
Thanks.
I'm sure there are good takeaways for the audiences. There are a lot of questions which we've got. Probably we'll collate them and share it with you, and you could answer them at your convenience and comfort. Thank you. Thanks a lot, guys. Thanks a lot, everyone, for tuning in.
Thanks, Vineet. Thanks, Anvesha.